is an old colleague of mine from Macquarie University. I haven't seen in a while, but it's good to see him here in his video. Ashton Danehkar is going to be speaking about morphologies of Wolf-Rayet Planetary Nebulae based on IFU observations. Okay, Ash, over to you.
Hello, everyone. I would like to thank the organizer for giving me the opportunity to present my talks. Today, I will talk briefly about the morphology of planetary nebulae around Wolf-Rayet central star, which we see by using IFU observations. We have a typically three classification of morphology of planetary nebulae around bipolar and ellipticals. About half of them are elliptical with or without point symmetry structure, and about 20% are bipolars. And we don't clearly understand what is caused the morphology of this planetary object could be related to binary and other stellar evolutions. And about the Wolf-Rayet planetary nebula, about 25% of planetary nebula, they have hydrogen deficient atmospheres and mostly are carbon sequence, and few are nitrogen sequence, and they all resemble massive Wolf-Rayet central stars. And this cause of this Wolf-Rayet central star planetary nebula are not well understood, but there are different scenarios. One of them are born again scenario, which we have late thermal pulse and another one binary evolutions, which remove the hydrogen-rich layer, outer layer of the stellar atmospheres. And for this study, I use wide field spectrograph on Australian National University 2.3 meter telescopes at Siding Spring Observatory, and it has a field of view 25 times 38 arcsecs, and it has different spectral resolutions. I use 7000, which gives a velocity resolution of 20 kilometers per second. And we have different IFU. We have a lensless IFU and lensless plus fiber IFU on the Gemini and GMOS. But the WIFEs is image slicing IFUs, and but it doesn't provide very high spectral resolution and spatial resolution, but it's good for extended objects. And about what we learn from IFU observation in my talks, I will explain how we detect, how we find morphology of planetary nebulae using IFU observation, also for compact object if there is available high resolution imaging, and also without any detail we can find inclination, orientation, and we also can use IFU to find shock excitation, also mapping shock excitation regions. Here is the object TH2A, which I studied in 2015, is published in AppChase. And this planetary nebula previously identified as a round planetary nebula, a spherical planetary nebula, but as you see, the IFU show that it has elliptical morphology. You see in position velocity diagrams, there jets, it's not jets, it's outflow extended, polar expansion is extended, reaching the velocity up to 100, and while we have mean expansion of 40 kilometers per second. So this planetary is not round anymore. And the other object which I studied was M242, which I did in collaboration with Quentin Parker and Wolfgang Stephans, and we studied these objects using IFU. Previously, these objects studied using long study observation 2012, and they found also there is a jet. And what we found that the feature of this extended knots and extended low ionization structure has the feature of fast low ionization emission regions. It has low ionizations in the nitrogen 2s. And other thing we saw in IFU observation, the source jets has size smaller than north jets, which related to interaction with ice sense. And also there is other thing that I studied, I didn't put here. There is a low ionization and excitation mapping, and show there is some shock excitation in source regions. And other things is these two compact objects, and we use the IFU observation to especially resolve this very compact object. This compact object has 2.5 arcsecs, which is not very good for 2 arcsec seeing resolution of WIFEs, but using the extended hollow and outer loops of this parameter, we can resolve the orientation of this parameter. And these two objects It's around very young Wolf-Rayet stars, and previously a study using high resolution imaging of Hubble Space Telescope, and there is a good agreement between what we see in orientation in WIFEs and what we see in Hubble Space Telescopes. And here there is other examples of compact objects. And on the left, I show the Hubble Space Telescope image, and on the left side, on the third columns, you see the radial velocity maps. And as you see, there is a good agreement between what we see in orientations, Hubble Space Telescopes, and also what we see in the WIFEs. And the other thing that we can use velocity channel maps and position velocity diagram to constrain the inclination angles. And here, for this example, M330s, I studied, there is recently, I put it in archives, the paper, and using this velocity channel maps and position velocity diagram, I constrain the inclination of these objects, and we see this has elliptical morphology, and there is extended outflows. And this object MB4, and recently in 2019 studied by Lopa and other people, and there is a paper published in Monthly Notice. And the interesting thing they found, again, I found the similar results. The knot structure has deceleration, so it doesn't have Hubble types follows. So also some people also call homologous expansions. So the expansion is, instead of homologous expansions, the expansions linearly decrease. After 10 arcs is decreased until reach the velocity of 0. So this is related to interaction with ISMs and shock collision with ISMs. And as you see in dispersion maps, which are shown on the right sides, there is a high dispersion map which is related to shock ionization. And this object is interesting as the morphology is similar to what they found in common envelope hydrodynamic simulation by Garcia, which they published in 2018, which also shown in day 1 talks. So this morphology of this planetary has some similarity to that common envelope hydrodynamics simulations. And here you see the velocity channel maps of these objects, and using the shapes program, I constrain the inclinations of this planetary relative to line of sights. And as you see, there is good agreement between what we see in observation and what we produce by shape programs. And I also included a halo, outer halo, in order to produce what we see in the IFU observations. And this one is PE11s, and in here up in bottom you see the Hubble image telescopes. And if you look at velocity dispersion maps, you see very high dispersion maps in both sides of this planetary nebula in region where there is outflow. So this could be related to interaction with ISM ambient density. Due to interaction by ambient densities, we have very high velocity dispersion in the region where outflow. Okay, so if you can use also to detect the shock collisions. And about the future plans, and we can use IFU for excitation mappings in the work which I did using high resolution Hubble Space Telescopes, which are published in APJ 2018. I use a technique which typically used for galaxy evolution BPD diagram to distinguish between low excitation region and high excitation region. Here you see, by using this technique, we distinguish the region, a large envelope which has low ionizations. And similarly, we can do using these techniques, BPD diagram techniques, for which I am right now working on in other papers. And we can use this technique to distinguish the region with low ionization region. In this HP4, you see those nuts has a region with low ionization exertion. Also, you see it in the region outer part of the central shell. There is some region with low ionization, which could be produced by photoionization or shock ionization due to interaction with ISMs. So this is a feature box, and there is also similar work for other planetary by mapping excitation using the technique BP diagram. And finally, I also look at this object, PMR5, which is stands for Parker, Morgan, and Russell. They found these objects in 2001 using H-alpha surveys. And later there is a paper in Mass in 2006. They suggested it could be VN type central star planetary nebula. But recently there is a preceding paper published by Todd in IFU symposium. They suggested it may be massive VNs nebula, not planetary nebula. And here you see the PV diagram of these objects. As you see, the PV diagrams extended up to velocity of 300, the polar expansions. And the mean expansion of the shell is also around 150 kilometers per second, which is not typical expansion velocity of planetary nebula. So these objects could be a massive nebula rather than planetary nebula. And interestingly, if you look at the morphology of this planet, which we see in H-alpha image, it has some similarity with VR104, which have similar morphology. This is my last slide, and you see there is we have in the VR104 we have the binary OB star and Wolf-Rayet star, and this made this shell. So this object PMR5 could be also a massive planetary nebula and similar. Also have a binary planetary nebula. And here I show this. There is other paper which I'm currently working, and in this paper I also present velocity diagrams and PV diagram of these objects. And this is my final remarks. And my study, I found mostly this Wolf-Rayet planetary that has elliptical morphology. We have the acceleration points, symmetric knot of HB4, and we have collision ionization in knots of HB4 and outflow of P1. And we also can use IFU for detecting orientation of compact object, also morphology if we have detail, if a high resolution imagings, so we can also do morphology. So thank you. I'm open to question.
Okay, thank you very much, Ash. Okay, we have Jesus as a question. Please go ahead and unmute yourself.
I was clapping.
Quentin, you are muted. Unmuted.
Okay, any questions for anyone else? I mean, Ash, these all the observations you made so far with the WIFE system on a 2.3 meter, which is a wonderful instrument. I've used it many times myself, sometimes with you. Have you done observations with other IFUs as well? And if so, how do you compare them to what WIFE is capable of?
I applied for GMOS, but they put it in band 3. So finally they didn't, they didn't collect the data. But I also look at the MUSE data, which is ISO telescope, VLT telescopes. And there is archive of the data can also download from archive of ISO data, and they have field of view of 1 arc means, and there are a few planetary, I think around 10 planetary which archive data of MUSE data available on ISO websites, and they are interesting for mappings of the physical mapping, the temperature mapping, and density mapping, and chemical mapping. But the resolution of velocity resolution is not very high, similar to wives. So higher than wives is Gmost. But what I see in the ESO archive data, I look at some of them, but they are good for especially resolve ionization mapping and physical mappings. But I haven't yet published anything why there are. I look at it's just a study the archive data.
I think one of the problems with IFUs, and many of them anyway, is the lack of angular resolution, lack of resolution, sorry, in the wavelength domain. That means that kinematic information is often relatively limited. I know that's the situation with WISE, for example. Anyway, Yuzu, you're not stopping clapping now, and you actually put your hand up.
I now have a question.
Let's hear from you.
Thanks, Askip, for the talk. You mentioned NGC 5189 about this HST study that you performed. I went into the ESO archive. There seem to be new observations of this object. Have you taken a look at this? Is
it recent? Because I looked last year, I didn't find this object. So I should look at it. Right now it's available. It's NGC 5189.
Yeah, this one, 5189.
Yeah, I looked at 1 or 2 years ago, but I didn't find this object. There was other objects. And well, I will look at. I didn't look.
Maybe Anna, if it's still around here, can tell us if they have taken a look at this, because I'm interested in this object because it has very strong X-ray emission. It's actually the most extended planetary nebula with X-ray emission. So determination of the physical parameters will be helpful.
The central star is VO star, and it's very hot. I think the temperature is around 150,000 kelvins. So it has very hot central star. And there is other object which I didn't present here. Is BP8, which is on my paper on archives. And there is no HST image, but it seems that it has some morphology similar to this object, and both objects have the similar type of VO type stars.
Okay, thank you. Stavros, you have a question.
Yeah, thank you. I would like to ask about this specific object 5189. How certain are you about about distinguish the mechanism that is responsible for the low ionization lines? Because these are spaxel by spaxel analysis and not 1D degraded spectra.
Your question about how I distinguish between these low ionizations and high excitation region, you mean?
Yeah.
This is something new. They recently started from 2018. Some people start to use this diagnostic diagram, which is similar to BP diagram. This BP diagram is used for resolving the Hubble image telescope extended galaxy. So we use these techniques to distinguish between the low ionization, which could have the fast low ionization, but we don't have any kinematics long slit high resolution observation of this low ionization region. So we cannot say if they are very fast or not fast, but they seem they have very high density. As high density propagates through low densities, may make some shock ionization. Because I'm also working on hydrodynamic simulation, and when there is some region when there is a expansion and propagation of dense materials, so the ambient density of low material, we have production of low ionization excitations. So this should be a study using the longest observation and the high resolution IFU observation, if we can see if they have. Also, there is some longest observation of this object, I think published in Mexican's journal, but they didn't detect any fast low ionizations based on what I saw in that the Mexican's publication.
Thank you.
Hey, you see, you still have your hand up. I don't know if that means you've got a second question or you just forgot to put your hand down. If not, then any final questions for anyone? Okay. In that case, thanks very much, Ash. We'll now get on to our penultimate speaker, which is Jacqueline Reshi Garcia, who's going to be talking about